All right, everybody, welcome back into another episode of the Real Family Business Podcast, where our family business helps your family business. Today, we are going to dive into...
Hey, hold on. Before we dive into anything, did you not get the dress code memo today, or what do we got going on here?
I did? What do you mean? Do I not look nice enough for the two of you?
Well, I mean, I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, but I think that he's wearing a sport coat. I got my sport coat. You're looking sort of tech Silicon Valley over there.
It's an age thing. That's what I think. It's an age thing.
And he just threw down.
I think it's actually style. Would you hire this guy if he came in like that for an interview?
Well, you say it's style. I think it might be substance.
Yeah. I'm looking over here, the one recording, the son I have recording all of this, and the poncho shirt.
Is that a fishing shirt?
Hey, man, poncho, baby.
Hey, that needs to be an A&M fishing shirt.
Ooh, yeah.
Look, y'all can dog me, but I'm not taking my style advice from two men in their 40s and 50s. So that's
You saw what you look
sure.
like. You might ought to take your style
That's
about
for
somebody
sure.
else.
Hey, if you could only put an old man's head on a young man's body, how sweet
Yeah.
it would be.
So true.
Oh, man.
So true.
All right, look, one thing that is not up for debate is the fact that moving to a quarterly system and shortening our goals to happen in 13 weeks has been big for our business. And so that's the topic of today's conversation is the power of a quarterly system. I think a lot of times businesses, whenever they're getting going, it's easy to set annual goals, right? I think in our vision thing, we talked about, you got to have goals, 10 years, 5 years. It's easy to say, hey, we got a 1 year goal. But look, between the day you set that goal, December or whatever it is, to the next December, 12 months later, your business should have changed quite a bit by that point, right? You might have new employees that you brought on. You might have new economic changes. I know in our industry, we have markets like hard markets and soft markets. There's so much that can change in a 12-month period. And so I guess it was about the beginning of this year, we moved to a quarterly system where, we still have the annual goals, but we do a better job of breaking them down. Well, what has to happen in the next 13 weeks for us to hit that goal? And we reset it once a quarter. And tell the story of you when you're running, because I think that's a good analogy to this business concept. When you're running, what did you always used to tell me that you used to do to kind of make yourself be able to hit the distance?
Well, I was a long distance runner, not to the degree your wife was in college, but I was pretty good in high school.
Did you just say Katie was a better athlete than you?
I guess so.
Yeah, you did.
And so anyway, when I was a long distance runner.
I know she's a lot better looking. So
Yeah, exactly. So I'm running, and I remember, I'd run miles, and I was a long distance guy, but I'm thinking, okay, I wouldn't think I have 10 miles to run. I would think, okay, first of all, let me get through the first mile. But even within that, I would say, especially coming back, maybe I had 4, 5, 6 miles under my belt. All right, if I can make it, of course, I'm in the country, running down these dirt roads. If I can make it to that tree, 300 yards away, I'm going to be fine. Then I'd make that tree. Then I'm getting tired, or if I can make it to that gate or that rock or whatever. Yeah. And so I had these short goals to help me make my long-term goal, and that's really, I guess, what you're speaking of.
Absolutely.
Now, hey, I'll give you another analogy I was thinking of, or illustration, and that is, think about someone going to the grocery store. They've got to think about, okay, what meals am I going to prepare for my family this week, next week, later this month, and then they buy all of the supplies to get there. Everything is about long-term and short-term planning, and then intermediate planning. It's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is. And I think in a business setting, I think the thing that has changed for us is it allows you to move quicker in those 13-week periods, right? It's like this. I was an English major. I think we all just made fun of me on the last episode about that. But I always would write my paper like the day before it was due, because look, I had that deadline and I got it done right by that deadline. Well, if that deadline would have been 6 weeks, I would have waited 6 weeks to write the paper. If the deadline was 3 weeks, I would have done it 3 weeks. But the deadline...
That's called procrastination.
Absolutely it is. But there's a rule out there that basically says you can get any job done with any time period you give yourself. You shorten the time period, you get the job done faster. And so the idea behind the quarterly system is if you can compress your accountability date, your procrastination date, if you will get things done at a higher level than if you just say, this is what I want to do next year.
See, but I think also incremental bites, it's the old cliche, how do you get elephant one bite at a time? I mean, the reality is in any kind of measuring what matters type of situation, you're going to have to allow for reaction to things that are beyond your control. There was a book I read years ago called "Measure What Matters," and they talk about objectives, key results, and the ability to simply give yourself the leash or the flexibility to be able to adjust and respond. And I think in family business, another conversation for another day, but the nature of what family business is inherently agile. It is inherently, if managed correctly, it's agile, it's responsive, it's sensitive to things that could be indications of something else that's coming. Big bureaucratic organizations by their very nature, it's like trying to turn a battleship.
One of the famous statements that's been made in this organization years gone by someone that's pretty high up, made the statement, failure to plan on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. I love that statement. And then also, but within that statement though, is if when you do make plans, you talk about the agility to deal with things that come up that you don't foresee.
Yep.
You've also got to have that kind of built in too, because it's going to happen, especially in a small business or a family business or even in a big business. Things are going to happen you did not foresee.
Absolutely.
But if you don't have a plan laid out, how are you going to deal with the chaos of the moment if there's no overarching plan along the way? So it's all of that together.
Well, I think what we're saying is your annual goals are great. You need to have them because your annual goals are, in your world, it was the 10th mile, right? Okay, I know I'm done at mile 10. But what you had to convince yourself is between miles 5 and 6, how am I going to get through mile 5 and 6? And then when you did, well, now mile 7, and you work your way there, breaking it down into that more, why did you say, I'm going to run to that tree 300 yards away? Because you knew you could make it there. And you were basically convincing yourself like to take those small bites.
I've got a friend who's a neurologist and a family friend, and he says, he does brain surgery. I mean, that's what he does. He's a brilliant guy. And he always says, people come to me all the time, ask for my opinions, just the sort of the perception that people have of that type of work. He goes, and I give people a lot of, educated, informed opinions. He goes, but I always put a disclaimer. I reserve the right to change my opinion with the benefit of more information.
Yep.
Because there's always that possibility that something's going to come in out of left field. And I think that aspect of incremental time management or goal management or, I think that it aligns with that.
I think there's several things. Number one, if you have a short-term goal and you actually hit that goal, there's success.
Yes.
You feel good about it. You
it's like an endorphin release.
Yeah, you build on the momentum. I read years ago, praise progress. And being someone who kind of lives in vision, sometimes I have to remind myself of that because I don't maybe praise progress sometimes as much as I should because I'm looking 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I mean, we had a meeting the other day. What did you say? You said, Dad, you're 3 steps ahead of where we are, which kind of is my job.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, maybe I didn't need to make that comment in that particular meeting because we were dealing with something more impactful right now.
Yes.
So how do you look to the future but remember today? Because I will tell you this much: if you only look at the future, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
so some people, some people dream, but they never do anything because they don't focus on the here and now.
So quarterly goals, super important. They move you forward quicker because you're kind of making those steps. What does the process look like? So let's talk about it from each of your perspectives. I know I'll add in mine. We obviously now work off of a quarterly system. We all know where we want to be by the end of next year or by the end of this year. What does the preparation look like for a quarterly? Because if what you're doing is you hit those goals at a quarter, you got to reset them. So what does it look like in your world? How do you prepare for what you want to do the next 13 weeks and how that fits into the overarching goal?
Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit broader and then back down to that.
Okay.
First of all, have you ever heard of the 80-year rule? 80-year rule.
Don't know if I have.
Well, if you picture what you look like, say you live a good long life and you live to be 80 years plus, whatever. What does your life look like when you're 80? Picture it in your mind and then back yourself up 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, however old you are. Okay, it's the same concept. That's your life. But now if you're thinking about work, okay, what do we look like 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years? Then let's back it up. Not 30, 20, not 20, 10, not 10, 5, not 5, 1. Okay, if this is what it looks like in a year, then what do I need to look like first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter? Then you just start looking at how much time it takes to do everything within a quarter to then get to the next quarter, which means you have to break it down into monthly goals or weekly goals or daily goals or per hour or per minute. I don't do that, by the way, per minute. But you have to set some aims or miniature goals or whatever you want to call it within that month and or quarter.
Yep.
Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How do y'all do that though? How do y'all plan for your quarter? Like, what does that process look like?
For me, it's a word that you've heard me use a lot, and that's priorities. I have to prioritize.
Yes.
And I think setting let's just say you got 12 steps you're trying to work through in a 12-month year, and 1 through 3, let's knock that out in the first quarter. And let's anticipate that giving people the focus on 1 through 3. I think the focus, giving the organization the opportunity to make the main thing, get that knocked out, adjust based on what you encounter, move on to step 2 and step 3. I think that's probably the biggest part of how I approach that.
So I would say this: if you have 10 things that you want to do, all right, I'm looking at number 1, 2, and 3. If I don't do those in this month or this quarter, we're going to have a real problem with something else.
Yep.
But really, 4, 5, and 6, it could kind of honestly, it could be half a year. It could even be really a year. It's important, but it's not urgent.
Yep.
So I think that's what you do. It was what you said. You analyze. You mentioned the word priority, but what's pressing?
Yep.
That has to be done, because some of these other things, maybe you want to do them, but they don't have to be done, or else other things are going to fall apart. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think if someone said today, hey, my family business, we set annual goals, but we struggle with getting them done, because what happens is we procrastinate until September, and then we look up and say, well, we're never going to get this done by January.
Right.
And you should have started back 9 months earlier. So they say, hey, we want to move to a quarterly system. We heard this podcast today, we want to move to that system. What I would recommend is you do that. You say, okay, in order for us to hit this goal at the end of the year, what is it that Keith is going to have to do with his department? What is it that I'm going to have to do with my department? Outline that, and then what you have is a rough draft for the year. But what I think you're going to get into at every quarter is there's just certain dynamics that you feel within the business that are maybe going to rearrange some of those priorities. So personally, what I do is I have a list that going. It usually starts at the beginning of a quarter, but it really ramps up the last 3 weeks of a quarter, because we're about to have a meeting at the end of the quarter, right? We're going to set our new goals. Those last 3 weeks, I just spend extra time thinking about what are the areas of the business that I feel like I need to make better. What are the areas of my department? What are the ideas that I have that are the real impactful ones, the ones that need to be prioritized?
In some ways, you're saying you reverse engineer the vision or the goal.
Absolutely.
That's what I mean by the 80-year rule. You reverse it. It's exactly right.
Yeah, but if you do that, I think when you get into that, what you're going to learn is just because you set goals quarterly does not mean you're going to be successful. One of the things I think that we learned over the first 2 quarters was you have to set specific goals. You mentioned Measure What Matters. I just finished reading it like 2 weeks ago.
Did you?
One of the quotes in here that I loved was, hard goals drive performance more effective than easy goals. That's one challenge I would give to any of the CEOs or presidents, people who are leading a team in this scenario. It's your job to make sure whenever someone says, this is the goal I have for next quarter, is that a hard enough goal is it motivating, is it challenging them? Because you have to challenge people because it makes people more effective. They have to think through how to get it done.
So I agree with that thoroughly, but I also think you also have to look realistically, because
Correct.
maybe sometimes you set goals that are like, they're not very realistic. Oh, I'm going to do this.
Can I tell you how my mind works though?
Yeah.
I said the word goal. Therefore, it has to be realistic. One of the definitions of a goal, a SMART goal, is the R. It is realistic.
Right.
So a goal, but it has to be a hard goal. It has to be something that challenges you, that motivates
But
you.
an
That gets you
achievable
out of,
goal.
An achievable goal, clearly, because it's a goal. It has to be achievable as well.
Because that relates into morale and
Yep.
employee satisfaction,
Yes.
a lot of those types of things.
But here's the other thing. A specific hard goal, though, will produce a higher level of output than a vaguely worded one. So maybe you're working on a quarterly system and you're thinking, yeah, this quarterly system, Jackson's not working for us. Well, is it the system or is it the goals you're setting? Because if the goal isn't going to get Keith out of bed in the morning to motivate him to say, I love what I do and I'm getting to fix this problem, it's awesome, this challenge that I'm getting to go up against, that's got to happen. But the second thing is, if Keith says, I'm going to make us better, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Give me a hard goal.
In what way are you going to make us better?
And that will help you every quarter. Because here's the thing. If you procrastinate in the quarter, you're going to have the same problem as if you procrastinate at the year. You're not going to have enough time to get these things done.
You mentioned SMART, right? SMART
goals, yep.
So what's the S?
Specific.
Exactly. Okay, so specific. If you're not specific and detailed in something, you can hide in generic.
Let's talk about, I think this is a challenge personally. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Obviously, a lot of our world, I'm in sales, right? I lead the sales team here, is setting goals. People are not trained how to set goals. They're not trained how to critically think and do this. It's not something you learn in school. You never learn how to do it. It's something that has to be taught afterwards. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're running a family business, my recommendation, invest some time in training on teaching people how to set a SMART goal. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, right? Relevant and timely. Like those things have to be in place, but it's something that, in my opinion, is a trained behavior at this point.
Well, no, I think that's exactly right. But then also something that I think people really struggle with is accountability.
Yes.
To themselves or to those goals, to their department. And now some people are self-motivated. And some people need to be, I hate to use the word managed, but helped to understand the importance of that. And if they're motivated by, even people that are motivated though, even if they're motivated, right, they can be excited, very excited about something and have the right attitude, but they don't break it down enough to realize, they're heading for trouble. Think about someone with debt problems.
Yep.
You can deal with debt if you break it down and look, okay, think about all the young people that get credit card debt, whatever. I mean, if you have that problem, you need to cut them up. That's a problem, right? But they don't, it's like they don't know how to fix the problem methodically, systematically. Yep. Hey, I've got to pay this much per week, per month, per year to get that handled. And
I actually think most people like accountability when they understand the big picture goal.
That's a great point.
And I think take it this way. I mean, any athlete, this is my favorite thing to tell salespeople. Any athlete, when you think back on your career, maybe it's high school, maybe it was college, who's your favorite coach? Everybody has a person that pops in their mind. That wasn't the coach that didn't challenge you. That wasn't the coach that didn't invest in you. That might have been a coach that hugged you, but it was probably also a coach that screamed at you. You know why? Because they held you accountable to be a better version of what you are then than you were now, if that makes sense.
And the only part
you're challenging them, and what people a lot of times in businesses need. They need accountability, but they need it just like that coach. Sometimes they need a hug, sometimes they need to be screamed at. It's going to motivate them forward.
That's what I was going to say, is there's two ways to go about accomplishing that, right? Because at the end of the day, what's the difference between responsibility and accountability? Right? You're responsible for reaching this goal. You're responsible for getting this work done. You're responsible. If you don't fulfill your responsibility, you will be held accountable for what you did. I think there's different semantics and different tactics to go about approaching that. That you're in either scenario, you're trying to get the ball into the end zone. The goal is to get the job done. But how you phrase that, I think, and being mindful of those dynamics when you're embarking on that kind of undertaking is important.
I think when you ingrain this within a culture, people respond well to it. But it's the concept of when you work here, you will be challenged every day to get better than you were yesterday.
The right kind of people like that.
That's who everybody should want in their business.
But that's my point. I told my son yesterday, son, you're responsible for cleaning your room.
Yep.
And if I get home from work today and you don't have that room clean, you're going to be accountable to me.
Yep.
Now I could have said,
that's what Kate told me this morning.
Now I could have told him, son, at the start of the day, you're accountable for getting your room clean.
Yep.
But I think in that situation, the message is more poignant to say, look, this is your responsibility.
Yeah.
Because I think people, to your point, people who want to perform, people who they just need the right clarity, they need the right instruction. Well, you give them that responsibility. You give them one coin, they'll come back with two.
In the book, the 1 minute, I think it's the 1 minute manager, it talks about how many people, if you were to go to them, okay, 1 minute, tell me what your job is. If they can't tell you, then you haven't clarified what you expect of them.
So that's a great point, and I want to tie that into something else. It's my opinion that many times when businesses are not hitting their annual goals or their quarterly goals, it is not an individual accountability problem. It is a discipline problem by the leader. Because a lot of times we say, well, they're not doing their job. Do they know their job? Have you told them they're not doing their job consistently? The problem is we want employees to be consistent with a manager that doesn't want to be. Right?
That's not
how that works. You have to show up every day before them to make sure they're doing their job. And that's the thing I love about a quarterly system.
Yep.
Because guess what? In a quarterly system, we are all equal in terms of what we're accountable to. Keith has goals this quarter, right? I have goals this quarter. Everybody has goals this quarter, and every one of us is accountable to getting them done.
Well, guess what? As a business owner, you have goals quarterly as well.
Yes.
IRS, every quarter you're going to owe taxes.
Right.
Okay. So you have, whether it be the IRS or whether it be your budget meetings, you're looking at your goals, your budgets, all this. Everybody's accountable.
Yes.
Now, whether they embrace that or not is going to be if they're good or not good in their own business.
I think that's a great way to wind this down, actually, because you just mentioned something there. You mentioned the IRS, you mentioned like the finance side. So let's talk the financial piece of the business. Then you have the operational piece of the business. Then you have the sales and marketing piece of the business. Having a quarterly system, what it also does is it unites all of those units of your business in the same timeline. Because sometimes salespeople are like, well, we operate annually because that's how we measure results is annually. And then the financial team's like, well, we do it quarterly because maybe like taxes or something like that. And the operation team said, well, we do it weekly. No. Everybody here is measured on the same standard of quarterly progress to results. Yep. That helps whenever we're discussing things with each other because then everything across the business is uniform. Because here's the thing.
Absolutely.
If from an operational perspective, you're not getting the job done. Well, maybe it's because the finance team needs to help the operations, or the sales team needs to help the finance team.
No,
Having them on the same page is important.
We look at things, of course, more than quarterly, right?
Yes.
Weekly, monthly, etc. But why quarterly? Well, that'll show a trend.
Correct.
Instead of just maybe
13 weeks, you can see a
Yeah,
trend.
you can see a trend, especially when you look at quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, and that gives you big picture with kind of a semi-small picture, but you can get more detailed than that.
Here's the thing. I heard it described this way about a quarterly meeting. I love it. They call it a sprint, right? When you're talking about, basically, we sprint 13 weeks at a time in this business. And when you sprint 13 weeks at a time, guess what? At the end of every quarter, you get a chance to take a breath, you get a chance to reset, and then you go out and you sprint again, right? And so when you think about it, when you're running as a sprinter, you do that. You run and then you stop and you get your recovery and then you do it again. And that's the idea of the business is if we're putting these sprints together, then by the time we look up at the end of the year, we've made a lot of progress versus setting those annual goals and allowing, procrastination to get the better of us.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, I was just.
What do you add on to that?
What do you got? What do you got?
I was just thinking. I mean, it's like if you're home watching an old western, right? And then you get up and you go to the bathroom, get you something to drink, and you kind of get that reset. You go back, you're ready to watch another old western.
That's right. That's called a sprint. That's a little different, but
I was thinking analogies.
Yeah.
Were you watching Hondo yesterday?
I like Hondo, especially when he
As-
throws him in the water. You don't know how to swim.
Okay.
as we wind down, here's what I would say about the quarterly structure. If your business is struggling right now with hitting annual goals, try it out. That's what I would tell you. Try it out. For us, it has increased communication. It has increased our consistency, our accountability, and then, like he said, I think it's increased every individual person's responsibility to this is how I will make our team better this year. And it starts with me making myself better and challenging myself to push a little bit harder. And that's easier to do over the course of a 13-week period. So try a quarterly system out in your business. If you got any questions, as always, hit us up. Make sure to follow on the social medias of Rollo Insurance, as well as on the YouTube. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for joining in, everybody. We'll see you back next time on the Real Family Business Podcast.